Last time I thought it was down here.
All right, it's time for Conservative Voice Radio here on
It seems
KMET.
to work. I don't know why.
Great to have you on the air, listeners. And, have you been watching the Democrat debates? Normally I wouldn't because, I don't like having to keep my barf bag so close to me. But I decided to do it. I needed to so I could talk about this stuff. And watching it, I almost wish, Sean, that we had some firearm, discharge audio going on because it's a circular firing squad is what's going on. They're blasting each other, and then sometimes they don't have to blast each other. All they got to do is open their mouth and they blast themselves. So it's almost like Wile E. Coyote, man. They just keep blowing themselves up. It's almost comical. The only reason why it's not comical is because, well, they're actually serious about what they're saying. They actually believe this garbage that I find almost comical. But Jan was paying attention and found Tulsi Gabbard to be interestingly honest. So, Jan, tell me about it.
Well, first, I'd like to say hi to my compatriots at the round table here, Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party. And welcome to Conservative Voice Radio, everybody. We're happy you're listening. The Democrat debates, I thought this was a great topic because first of all, I made sure that I looked at every clip and I was either rolling laughing or I did the eye roll or I muted it, one or the other. And what I found that was the most stunning moment was when Tulsi Gabbard mentioned Kamala Harris's stint as Attorney General in California. That was from 2011 to 2017. And being a Californian, I just held my breath because she was speaking truth to power. And we here in California were just so angry at that time with the job, the poor job she did here. And now they've got her as a, quote, front runner for the Democrat Party. So Tulsi says, well, you put a lot of innocent people in prison for minor marijuana charges. Meanwhile, you're on radio laughing that you smoke marijuana. And everybody, there was a collective gasp in the audience and people were shocked by that. And she said, as a matter of fact, you even hid information, evidence on someone on death row. And we had to have a judge overrule you. And I think the term is exculpatory evidence. Help me on this, guys.
Yeah, that's
not
right.
A lawyer.
And Kamala Harris, I'm going to defend her for a second.
Oh, no.
She's a prosecutor, and so she's being accused of doing things from a prosecutor standpoint that opposes her political viewpoints. Well, the law is the law. So in the case of putting people in jail, for example, for minor marijuana charges, that if that's what the law is, that's what the law is, and that's what her job is. And so,
I went back and looked.
But now that said, 2/3 of what Tulsi was talking about wasn't that kind of stuff. It was underhanded stuff. But when it comes to the law itself, you're supposed to prosecute as the law says.
Yeah, but as a prosecutor, you get discretion. And or as a DA, she was just an assistant DA in the office of Alameda for 4 years, and then she quit. And that was the extent of her prosecutorial activities. I mean, then she was an appointment in the government. So she only did a little stint in for 4 years as an assistant in the office. Didn't do any real work.
Yeah, are you saying Raul Ruiz has been a doctor longer than she was a prosecutor?
I don't know.
But you're right about the discretionary thing, but the keeping evidence away to help a defendant is inexcusable, which is what Tulsi Gabbard claimed.
And you didn't mention, Jan, that he was innocent. He was innocent of the crime that he was accused of.
And that situation right there, which I'm glad Tulsi did bring up.
That's important.
And that is not only is important, but it pretty much sums Kamala Harris up, and it sums a lot of the Democrats up. Whatever it takes, even if it's illegal, because the ends justify the means.
Well, Tulsi also brought up the fact that she made people stay longer in prison past their allotted sentence from a judge just so that they could exploit their labor.
Yes.
And you see them with the fire department around here in California. You see them with the California Conservation Corps. You see them with Caltrans. You see them on the side of the freeways doing the weed abatement and the picking up trash. Those are all teenagers and felons that have to have community service. They're all out there.
That's what happens when you don't have enough illegal aliens to do it.
You know what, Glenn?
It's free.
This reminds me of Weissman in the Mueller case. This is exactly
exculpatory.
Thank you so much. Evidence.
You'll save me next time, I'm sure.
That means when you're keeping evidence that will help the defendant. And Weissman did that, and the Supreme Court overruled him on that.
Yeah, it just shows that she's corrupt, and she's only in it for herself. And she in order to get the positions that she even had, that she started with, she was dating the Speaker of the Assembly in the state of California, Willie Brown, and it's a shady past. It's a dark past.
You know, a couple other things about Tulsi Gabbard. She works for Donald Trump. He is the commander in chief, so she has to be a little honorable and tell the truth. And she really exposed some of the Democrats. So
she's a Democrat from Hawaii. I'm not holding my breath.
Well, she was in the service. Active right now.
She's active reservist. So
right.
I think
that's a good point, Glenn.
Yeah, I think that's a factor with her.
But she doesn't fit in the Democrat Party just based on her performance that evening.
Right. And it would have been nice if she would have pointed out that Kamala Harris' parents were involved in the slave trade in Jamaica, I believe. They owned slaves. So
that's juicy.
She's going to have to pay herself.
You want to know about that one, huh?
She is not.
You heard it here first, folks.
She's not an.
Way to go, Glenn.
She's not of African descent, like a lot of the blacks are.
Right.
In the South in America.
Part.
So the
She's
Democrats.
Jamaican, and that's why she brought up the smoking marijuana. And by the way, her father was livid that she said that, because he said just because we're Jamaican doesn't mean that we get high every day on pot. How can you say that?
Yeah, the big thing with Harris is she's running on a racist ticket of hatred. That's the Democratic Party today. Racism and hatred for Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and the Constitution of the United States. The Democrats are totally out of step with the American people. I think that's why they don't want Donald Trump on the ballot in California, because I think that Democrats are starting to sense there's a lot of damn anger out there against the Republican Party.
I think you're right.
Or Democrat Party, excuse me.
I would just want to say that I was cheering and yelling when I saw her go after Kamala Harris, because Gabbard, here's the thing on Gabbard that I know of. She's not a Christian. She's Hindu. She is a left-wing loon, as O'Reilly used to call them. But it was great and important to see Kamala skewered, to see her skewered, surprisingly, especially when she has a chance of becoming the front runner. And let me tell you why. Okay, here's why. So Warren is an Indian. Okay, so that was one reason that started off, Warren's case there. But then she's kind of goofy. She's kind of, she's strong though. She's strong. And then, further Democrat. And then Biden, maybe, he was Biden his time, but maybe too long. So
old white guy.
That's all I'm going to say about that, because I think there might be some stuff later on that we were going to find out about him. And then let me just wrap it up here. Bernie also is over the top on the age and what have you. And he's the only known socialist, especially in the Democrats that
he's the only one that's willing to admit it.
Non-educated even.
Thank you.
So and then Buttigieg, even though he's the voters, like him, he's pretty sharp, it seems like, for a Democrat. We're not ready for a homosexual president. I'm just going to be blunt. I don't think the voters are. Okay.
Who whips out the religion card every chance he gets.
Yeah. So he's like defeating.
He's holier than thou.
So he's shooting himself in the foot. And then Beto is out already. It's pretty much been, like in the press and everything like that. And now they're saying is Booker is too intense. So you know what? The only one left was Kamala Harris, and guess what? They got her.
She's done.
She's done. Gabbard got her.
Well, I think the GOP will pull out that information, Freedom of Information Act.
You got to remember that Kamala Harris is coming from California, and this is a powerful state. And you can count some of these candidates down and exposed, as corrupt. But the left doesn't care anymore. They are rabid. They hate capitalism. They hate the notion that you have to work hard and earn something. They hate merit. They hate productivity. And all these things have been taught in college. We have been asleep while these narcissistic, young, bottle-fed, patted on the back people have become so angry because they look at their peers and they have a little more.
And you said something interesting. She's from California. California's powerful and sort of stuff. And that actually ties into Jan's last link. How California has removed the arrest reports from the Kamala years.
Yeah.
To try to cover for her.
Yeah, they're definitely covering for her.
How convenient.
And the media's in on it. The thing is I watched the debate and they just were trying to skewer corporatism and corporate America and corporate this and corporate that. Look, we don't live in the 50s anymore. Who's corporate America now? It's Facebook, it's Google, it's Apple. This is corporate America.
But there are business owners. I tried to explain this years ago to my Democrat mom.
Right.
And I said, Mom, did you ever get a job from a poor person? Well, our jobs come from corporations, from manufacturing owners,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay? From mom and pop businesses.
But the thing is, they've always been the left's boogeyman.
Yes.
But now they're trying to say that the boogeyman is the donut store owner down the street, or it's the person that has the dry cleaners. It's not the big corporation.
Making profit. Oh, that greedy person.
Or the real estate investor that has over generations built up his land equity. They hate that notion, but what they're lying about this notion that it's IBM or it's these big farms or it's agribusiness or whatever. So what they're doing is they're trying to shield where the money's coming from. And it's coming from the intellectual market. It's coming from the .coms. It's coming from Silicon Valley, all over the world. And they're just trying to block it. They're the corporatists. They're the segregationists.
Well, there's socialism.
They're the eugenicists. Thank you.
There's socialist wealthy and the capitalist wealthy. The capitalist wealthy become wealthy by creating things, manufacturing things like that. Socialist wealthy, they become wealthy by taking things, such as Soros, such as Facebook, and so on and so forth. Now, that said, we have less than a minute before break, and I wanted to do something that Jan almost slapped me upside the head for, because I forgot to do it at the very beginning of the show, and I normally do this, is just so that you can put your names to voices here, folks. This is your Tea Party program, Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party. And in the studio there in Cherry Valley is Glenn Stoll, Jan, Diane, and Peter. Peter being the young voice in there, because I know you can tell by listening, right, who the young voice is? Yeah, right. And then I am Douglas V. Gibbs. I'm at the Murrieta studio, and we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the debates, but not about what was said as much as what have we learned as a result. What have you learned about the Democrats? What have you learned about these candidates? I will say this, and I'm going to go out on a limb, because I think that the winner of those debates clearly was Donald J. Trump. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Conservative Voice Radio here on KMET, the show that follows Constitution Radio.
Doug, I have an announcement for Conservative Voice Radio listeners.
Okay.
The Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party will not have an evening meeting in August. We are on vacation. We'll be back September 12th with our evening meetings, but we do meet for breakfast every Tuesday morning at the Farms House Restaurant in Banning at about 8 a.m. We'd love for you all to join us.
Very good. And, that breakfast meeting is a lot of fun, and I try to be there as often as I can. I won't be there this Tuesday morning. I've got to take care of some personal issues, but I'll hopefully be back in time for the Tuesday morning breakfast the following week. All right, next segment. What did we learn from the Democrat Party debates? And I tell you what I've learned. This ain't grandma's and grandpa's Democrat Party.
No, they said some shocking things. In fact, I saw a clip of Frank Luntz, who is kind of a pundit on words, political pundit. And he said that he was so shocked by the language he had not in all his years. And I don't mean it was blue language. It was shocking, authoritarian language, totalitarian language, like, let's put those insurance executives in jail. That was one of the comments from Biden.
And Pol Pot would be proud.
Yeah, and Bernie and Liz Warren, we need to tax them. They shouldn't have these profits. And then finally, de Blasio is like, we're going to tax the H out of the wealthy. And I'm thinking, this is not America. Who are these people?
Yeah, Harris seemed to be saying, hey, I was a prosecutor, and I'm not going to mess around with these people. I'm going to go after them big time.
Seriously.
And act like a prosecutor to actually go after business. And they're blaming everything on business and capitalism and attacking the American way. Business is America. When we go to World War II, our business people kicked in, produced what was necessary, and we won that war. And it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a capitalistic, free society where people work hard and they do it, they make money, they want to be paid for it.
Yeah, when you hear them talk about the envy that should exist on the left, you should hate that person because they have more than you. And this is what they try to gin up. And we remember, 15 years ago, or they had the Wall Street bailouts, and you had those people after that upset, and they were the anti 1%. They were the 99%. What did they call themselves? The anti-bankers. Doug, do you remember those guys that laid on Wall Street and they
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street. Yeah. Okay, and they were homeless people that would set up tents and just lay on the street. Mm-hmm. They were drug addicts, and that was. They've now shifted to the Antifa movement. Now they wear black. Now they show up instead of tents and ponchos and signs in front of on 5th Street in New York. They're running around with sticks and they're upset. And this is a hatred and that's taught in socialism. It's taught in socialism, and that's what gives the people and the politicians the power to go in and take the money from those that hopefully earned it on their own,
There was a lot of virtue signaling. By that, I mean, we are better than you. We can decide those people are evil, and we're going to save you from those big, bad corporate people. By the way, those are the ones giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to my campaign, but of course they don't tell you that. Right, Diane?
Well, I guess they're not including, the head of Facebook and the head of Google and, all those big corporations too.
Yeah, what they don't explain there that I think American people are aware of, the people that give hundreds of thousands of dollars to these Democrat candidates, they explain to them, we know you have to attack us and go after us, and we're financing your campaign. That's okay. You can attack us all you want, as long as you remember you're working for us, not the people, because we're the one financing you and giving you the ability to get elected. And I'm talking about people like Google and Facebook and all these Silicon Valley, all these rich California movie actors and so forth that finance these people.
And you know what? Our third segment proves what you're saying, Glenn. That's a little teaser for later. You guys, if you're listening on the third segment, the corporations behind this are allowing it to happen because they know they are protected by the laws that Congress doesn't write.
Yeah, I want to back up the last segment. Peter explained a lot of the things that these people hate, capitalism and freedom and so forth. There is some things that these people love that were on the stage. They love late-term abortion and even go along with infanticide, and they love socialism. That's where the government controls all business and all property. So,
and they don't even realize, huh, Glenn?
Right. And, Joe Biden, the leading candidate still, I believe, when he was a younger man, he opposed busing children for desegregation. And The reason he did that is because all the Democrats said, we don't want you busing our children. All the blacks said, we don't want you busing our children. Everybody was against it. So Joe Biden didn't support it. He was against it. Now, if he would have stood up.
He also said he didn't like the idea of the federal government dictating.
Right. If he had stood up and said that, yes, and I'm still against taking your children and busting them all over, he would probably jump up another 25%.
Right.
But he's like the rest of them. He's a coward to stand up to the progressive, leftist, Marxist, socialists that are now dominating in this country, in our universities and the California government and the deep state in Washington, D.C.
Well, Peter, the two things that were not mentioned on those stages, two things, abortion and Mueller. Gee, I wonder why.
Well, first of all, they won't use the word abortion. It's, reproductive rights.
Yeah.
And I just had a listener, matter of fact, yell at me for saying, it's not Mueller, it's Mueller. Even he says it's Mueller. It's spelled Mueller. That's
Mueller.
He's stubborn as a mule.
That's right.
But you're right. They didn't mention that because they're only going to mention what they think is going to help them. And Glenn, you're observant because it's fascinating. The language that they use, they're going to be careful also. Going back to abortion, they don't use that term because they know it's a negative term. That's the reason why they don't say a lot of things, Glenn, is because they know it's negative.
They call it choice, and the baby has no choice.
I think that we need to graphically explain what these people are doing, and they're doing it constantly. When they do a late-term abortion, they a lot of times they deliver the baby all except their head. And then they use a little stainless steel tube about double the size of a straw to suck the brains out. Now, the listeners should listen to that. That's out and out murder of a baby that's just getting ready to be born. And that is supported by the Democratic Party leadership. None of the Democrat ordinary people want to do that. They're against that.
Glenn, just to stop, I explained this to a 35-year-old friend of mine. I explained to him the procedure of partial birth abortion. And he looked at me and he said, no one would ever do that. And I thought,
but they do.
These people are changing the wording. They're changing the definitions just to confuse the public because the majority of the people know that these people are frauds. These candidates aren't even talking about their religion. They think religion is what do you call it? Superstition. The only one that talks about, it's just so ironic. The only one that talks about Christianity is the gay guy on the stage. Who is told
he uses it as a weapon.
Yes. So this is where they've gone. It's become such a fraud. Everything is upside down, and so they do not respect religion or faith. They don't hold it in value, and that's a really telling sign that you can't take them seriously. That they get their values from themselves. That's a red flag because.
Well, especially to the Black and Hispanic communities.
Yeah, of course.
Who are very religious. Very faith
Buttigieg, he's not going to get it because the blacks do not support him because they are inherently family oriented and conservative in their family values. When not undermined by the left. Prop 8 won in
California because all the Obama black voters came out for Obama, but because of their value system, they voted in favor of Prop 8.
That's why Prop 8 passed. That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
I like what Rush Limbaugh had to say. I was reading a little bit about what he had to say about the candidates and what they speak about. He says, nothing that they speak about inspires you or is uplifting. It's not inspiring or uplifting. It's not, it's just misery. Nothing to improve life. They're covering up anger. They're covering up George Washington murals rather than cleaning up feces and needles off the streets out there. He was talking about Los Angeles.
San Francisco.
Either or. Yeah, you bet.
That is so true.
They're even attacking the fact that several million people have went off food stamps. They're saying Donald Trump and the Republicans are taking food away from families. The fact is, the reason that millions of people went off food stamps is because their income has increased and they got jobs where they could go to work and feel a lot better about themselves. They're not leeching off the government or I should say dependent on the government, because there is a lot of people that get down and out.
Yeah,
We give them a helping hand. But I would like to see that number cut by another 5 or 10 million.
Yeah, well, you got to remember the Democrats view the success of food stamps by how many people are on it, higher number. Republicans view success as the lower number. That's just the way they look at it. That's just like when you talk about the feces and the needles. The Democrats were all excited about that because they needed to create a new bureaucracy and more government jobs to take care of that.
Yeah,
that's what they want.
Don't fix the problem. The last thing you
don't fix the problem. Just make more government jobs to manage it, but keep the problem in place. Don't ever solve it, because if you solve it, what are we going to run on?
Yeah, we can't get government
that's
money
a good
anymore.
point.
An interesting stat came out a few days ago because they said that the jobs report was 157 million people in America are working. But the man pointed something out. He said the difference between the Obama administration and the Trump administration is during number 44's reign, they were government jobs. During Trump's reign, they are private sector jobs. That's the health of the country, the private sector, not a government bureaucracy. That would not be good.
This country would boom right now even more if they'd pass one simple law. They have the 30-hour rule, where if you work an employee more than 30 hours, you have to provide health insurance. If they would get rid of that, where a lot of small businesses don't normally provide health insurance because they can't afford it, you'd see another explosion in employment where people could actually go ahead and go to work and work more than 30 hours. That's one reason we have a lot of people working more than one job.
That's right.
Because a lot of jobs, they only hire them for 20 hours. They only want part-time employees because they don't want to provide a lot of benefits because they don't have the money for that.
Oh, and the other thing I want to bring up, Doug, is the one thing they did the entire evening was rip up Obama. And that was a shock to Biden. And
Obama's too conservative for today's Democrat Party.
Yes, but what they don't realize, let's take one segment of what Obama forced down the throat of America, and that was the Affordable Care Act. He destroyed businesses. He took millions of private plans away from people, so they had to sign up for affordable care. So the point being that here we have this group saying, well, we're not going there. The thing we messed up, well, we're going to give you more of it, and we're going to call it Medicare for all.
Well, in other words, what they're saying is he messed up. It wasn't socialist enough.
Yes.
Well, see, this is the thing. So Trump gives the left this clarion call. Okay, they give him this excuse. So we remember Rahm Emanuel said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." Right? We heard that. Right. Trump's become the crisis for the left. Now, the way Obama governed, he was behind the scenes. Everything was covert with Obama because he was worried about his image. He was worried about the backlash. He didn't care about the policies, but he wanted to do it all behind the scenes just because he's a shady person. Well, that did not stand for a lot of the left. They want in your face. They want fires. They want flipped over cars in Paris. And so what happened with Trump is it gives these radicals the fuel to just feed this element in their party. Probably 10%, I would say. Very minority party, the Democratic Party. And now they're just rabid. And they're all competing with each other to be the most left. It's going to collapse. Trump's going to win.
Well, as Victor Davis Hanson has accurately recognized, Trump has become their great white whale.
Okay.
One thing that's
I like that analogy.
Happened in the news the last week is Donald Trump's attack of Congressman Cummings from Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore City. I left there in 61, I believe, when the Democrats took over. I was gone. Of course, I didn't know anything about what was going on in politics. But he attacked what's going on in Baltimore and Cummings. And I hope he keeps that up because our cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, all these big cities, they pack these people in like sardines and they control the vote in them cities.
They've been run by Democrats for half a century.
That's right. And they're corrupt. And I hope he attacks the hell out of them because they are cesspools run by the Democrats. They want them that way. They do not want to fix the problem. All these billions of dollars that flow into these cities to fix that problem, they divvy it out to all their friends, and they're having an orgy with taxpayers' money. And Cummings is one of them. He is a corrupt politician, unfit to serve in Congress, in my humble opinion.
And they've got billions of dollars.
16.
Well, guess what?
And
Crazy.
what have they done? You don't see it.
Yes.
Newsflash, today it was on TV that they've come into the city of Baltimore, waste management, picking up trash. Elijah
Yay, Trump!
Elijah Cummings is at a nursing home doing, a talk with the people there.
So he's not checking in, though.
He's
Right?
in trouble now.
Not checking in, unfortunately.
Then they'll take pictures of it and say, see, Trump was lying.
Elijah Cummings made a tactical mistake by attacking that guy from Homeland Security. And I don't know if you guys saw that footage, but please go back and look at that footage when Elijah Cummings just attacks that man who served faithfully for 35 years.
Right.
Anyways, Elijah Cummings is from Baltimore. And so his tactical mistake was he didn't know that Ben Carson was from Baltimore too, I guess.
Yeah.
The Mayo Clinic.
Yes, the
he
Mayo
worked
Clinic.
at the Mayo Clinic
So-
as a top
so
surgeon.
Here comes
I love Ben
Ben Carson and just destroys the entire left's argument. He walks away with it in shambles.
He's
They're
awesome.
not talking about it anymore. And they can't. They have to wait till something happens in St. Louis or,
Ben
or
Carson,
San Francisco.
boom.
Ben Carson
you
just
mean
smashed
that
him.
you mean that racist white guy, Ben Carson? Oh wait,
yeah,
no. that's
yeah,
a
that
white-
racist white guy that worked on a
He's
lot
never
of
included
Alright.
when they talk about the black politicians.
All right, we need to go to break, but we've got more to talk about on a different topic. You guys are a bunch of radical conspiracy theorists, domestic terrorists, and we're going to talk about you next. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back, Conservative Voice Radio. This is Douglas V. Gibbs, your host. I'm with the Banning and Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party, Peter, Glenn, Jan, and Diane in the studio in Cherry Valley. Your Pass Area Tea Party program here on KMET 1490 AM. And the FBI has decided they're going to start targeting what they consider to be conspiracy theorists. In other words, anybody who talks about fake news from their point of view as domestic terrorists. Can anybody say Patriot Act? Are we seeing an overall silencing trend there? The answer is yes. As for Patriot Act and domestic terrorists, we don't need the FBI. We don't need the CIA. We don't need the NSA. All we need to take care of domestic terrorists is the Second Amendment. Because if everybody's walking around armed, trust me, there won't be a problem with domestic terrorists. That said, what does the Washington Standard say?
Well, the conspiracy theory, it's the term used towards Christians, conservatives, Republicans, constitutionalists, libertarians, and American patriots to marginalize the individual on a personal level and draw attention away from the hypothesized scenario because of some form of truth being presented in the hypothesis. You got that? So, in other words, like George Orwell says, when you speak truth and it's revolutionary, it's 1984.
When 1984 has arrived.
Yes.
Now, a little later than we thought it would. Now, the thing is, this is where technology gets involved. They've got the technology to do it. Anybody want to comment on that?
Yes, we do. And now I understand after reading this article, let me just say this and then give it to the rest of you, is that, I've been upset about Facebook and Twitter and how they're silencing conservatives and what have you. And now I realize they may very likely be an arm of the FBI, the folks in Congress who like it that way, because no matter how many hearings they have, they do not correct this issue. So is it being used against the everyday citizen? That's my question. Well, what do you think?
Who's the FBI using to monitor this traffic? These groups? They're using the left. They're using the Google. They're using Microsoft, IBM, all those companies, and they need to. And I believe the State Department or the Department of Defense should be on the cloud. They should be ahead of the game. But we have to watch these people extremely closely, because what they have to build the metrics in order to pick out these key words. Okay. Now, what are these key words going to be?
Well,
are they going to be Christian?
You. I told you what they are.
Are they going to be, and so what about race? Are they going to only pick up certain racial terms? And so it's very dangerous. And this is why it's all got to be resisted, because who has the power?
The big conspiracy theory going right now, and there's a lot to it, and it's got people very upset, a lot of people, is the term deep state. They feel that there's a group of people, bureaucrats, that never change and leave office. Presidents come and go. But there's a group of bureaucrats that are in the deep state that have a mindset that they control the government, they have the power, and when they are threatened, they get upset. And Donald Trump has upset the apple cart when he got elected. And there's one conspiracy theorist called QAnon, and he's been coming on.
QAnon.
QAnon.
Yeah.
That's been all over the internet.
Yeah.
And he's after the deep state.
Well, this is something I've been following, and Q is the individual, the anons are the people who basically interpret what he's putting out there. That's why they call it QAnon or QAnons. And
nobody knows who it is.
Well, and then Q plus is Donald Trump. And I followed it enough where there's no doubt in my mind that he is legitimate and someone on the inside. Matter of fact, I
agree.
Every once in a while, you'll hear me end a video or a show with "Where we go one, we go all," and that's actually a Q reference. But now, Glenn, and I'm sorry I interrupted you there because I want you to continue, but I just want to make sure there was a clarification on Q so that it was understood by the listeners. So now you believe that Q is on target, and what do you think is going on?
Here's the simple fact that's come out over and over in the news. There was an investigation of the President of the United States as a result of the director of the FBI leaking documents and confessing to his crime to Congress, to the New York Times, for the purpose of having a special prosecutor appointed by the Department of Justice in order to investigate Donald Trump. Well, that actually happened. He committed a crime by leaking documents. A Mueller was appointed by Rosenstein, and for 2 years, he harassed the president. As it turns out, it's come out now recently in the news, that it was a group of attorneys that worked for Hillary Clinton, basically, that were doing harassing. Mueller looked a little retarded and slow, like he didn't really have that much to do with this investigation.
He wasn't even sure what was in the report. He had extra section numbers.
Was just, they used his good reputation to make him the leader of a pack of underhanded, low-life criminals that give millions of dollars to Hillary Clinton directly and indirectly to attack the president for 2 years, and they had a purpose, and they were successful. They elected a democratically controlled House of Representatives. That was the purpose of the Mueller investigation. Now they're going to impeach Donald Trump, and they're going to have a trial going on during the next election, and they're going to have all the major news media, Hollywood, and every local paper they can control to attack the president, to get him out of office so the deep state, the bureaucrats, can get control. They got emails where they're calling Trump every lowlife you can think of, and if they had a secret plan, they were going to take him out if he got elected. That Mueller investigation was the deep state plan.
Well, the question I have to ask is, if we are telling nonsense conspiracy, then why bother to silence us? You can just, put a laugh emoji after something we write.
Yeah,
why
are we
constantly being blocked and silenced? Because we are telling the truth.
Well, if it wasn't a danger, then they wouldn't need to try to silence us.
Exactly. It's common sense. Figure it out, folks.
So here's the thing. This is part PR word police. And so they call it domestic terrorists. We saw what the Obama administration did with the IRS. They weaponized it and they went after certain groups. They had a motive to silence certain people. They had an agenda with the Fast and Furious to try to take away our Second Amendment. They wanted to paint the picture that there was all these guns flowing over to the cartels and the innocent people were dying. And that was their agenda. They wanted to get that passed. With this conspiracy theory, they want to focus on the white conspiracy theorists. Because who likes the white conspiracy theorists? No one does. Even the white people, right? So they're framing it in this package, calling it domestic terrorists, so that they can take away more people's liberty. Now, when I hear domestic terrorist, I hear the guy who shot up San Bernardino, or I hear that what happened in Gilroy. That's a domestic terrorist,
right?
But that's not what they mean. They mean the white people in Texas who are gathering the guns, and that's what they mean. But they're not being honest about who they mean. Just
well,
so they can
well,
get
in other words, this kind of stuff is not dangerous unless they are the definer and interpreter of terms.
Correct. Right. Who's the
and
FBI?
Then they can define it to mean anything they want.
I mean, it was the last time a conspiratist went and shot up a mall.
That's
and you know, they've got a news thing going on out in El Paso today. Right now. Yeah. So
exactly.
Doug, I can tell you how to identify a real potential terrorist and somebody that's trying to undermine the country. You look for people that are elected to office or they get a job that's working for the government to swear to uphold and protect the Constitution against all enemies, domestic and foreign, and then they turn around and they attack citizens' right to bear arms and freedom of speech. That's your real underhanded, sneaky, slimy terrorists are really going after the American people.
And our Constitution. They want to get rid of
also,
that.
Doug pointed out something very interesting. Those that define who a terrorist is are the most dangerous of all.
Yeah, I looked at the article and they were basing these terrorists on terms they were using in their posts, racial terms, hate-filled terms.
Well, yes, we're hearing it now.
So they're using hatred and they're terrorists. This is how Europe defines the speech police, right? You can go to jail for saying things in Europe.
When you're changing the name of a manhole to a maintenance hole or a people place or whatever you call it, we have reached insanity. But that tells you this, we are going over the cliff because now they're telling you how to think and how to speak.
And who to hate.
And that's the most dangerous thing of all.
You know, they used to burn people at the stake if they didn't think the way they were supposed to think at one time.
Well, they also used to burn books.
Years ago.
They also used to burn books. Now they just, influence social media.
That's
Same
right.
thing.
So the biggest weapon we have, and you've talked about this many times, and we need to remind people, the biggest weapon we have to keep our country free is the First Amendment and the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And the First Amendment's probably is more important than the second because you don't have to resort to violence. And that's freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom of the press, freedom to petition the government, and
freedom of religion. Freedom of religion comes first. So we got religion, speech, press, assembly, and the right to petition the government.
And I pray God gives me the strength to fight for our Constitution.
And without the Second Amendment, you don't have the First Amendment.
This is true. Right. And what he was referring to is something that I refer to in my speeches. You have, once again, religion, speech, assembly, religion, speech, press, assembly, and the right to petition the government for redress grievances. In other words, pray about it, talk about it, write about it, gather about it, and be activists about it. That's what the First Amendment's telling us to do. And we've got less than a minute left. So, folks, tell the folks what you think of them.
Speak truth to power. Thanks so much for listening.
Watch your mailbox and driveway for the neighborhood bulletin for banning Beaumont and Cherry Valley.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.
And if Biden's out, just think about it. Who's going to be the top down running? God bless you all. I'll talk to you later.
That's a scary thought, Diane. Thanks for that. Thanks for the nightmares.
I think that's the thought of the day for me. I'm wondering.
United we stand. God bless America and God bless you. And remember, where we go one, we go all. We'll see you next time on KMET. Thanks for listening.